So, hello everybody and welcome. Yes, welcome back here at BSN Network. You back here, BSN Network. This is the BSN Network podcast here today. It is Monday, June 7th. Hopefully everybody's having a good day so far and had a good rest of their day yesterday. It is in fact Monday, June 7th here today. Hopefully everybody had a good weekend. We are coming off of another weekend, and yes, another weekend that was full of sports, full of baseball and basketball and hockey, and a lot of great sports were on, and a lot of fun stuff to watch, and a very exciting weekend in sports, a very exciting weekend as a Brooklyn Net fan, as obviously we took the win on Saturday night, won that game, I'm definitely upset that James Harden got hurt. I am definitely nervous that he is not on the lineup tonight and he is not playing tonight. I am nervous, and I am, really, really curious to how we are going to play tonight's game. Are we going to play at a high level? Are we going to win tonight's game? Is his presence going to be missed a lot, or are we going to be able to, find a way to win without him? And that's the big question tonight. And obviously we found a way to win in game one, but now that the Bucks know for a fact that he is out, they can kind of counter and really game plan to whole. It's not easy to stop Kyrie or KD, but it's even harder to stop Kevin Durant, Harden, and Kyrie Irving all together. Now there's one man down, so the Bucks have to focus on just one less guy, and we need big performances out of Blake Griffin and Mike James and guys like that in order to win and cover up Harden's absence. So that's a big game. Obviously, they won Saturday. Big game tonight. Yankees look terrible again. They get swept by the Boston Red Sox. I said that on Monday. I said Monday to open up that Rays series. I said we would be lucky. I said I wouldn't be surprised if we win 1-2 games on this homestand. I said that, and sure enough, we won 2 out of 4 against we split against the Rays, which was actually a pleasant surprise because, to be honest, the Rays, a team who we all expected probably to sweep, especially after game 1 of that series, losing that way. You were like, okay, we took 2 for 4. And then you go to the Boston series, and like, all right, 3 games here, you got to at least get 1 or 2. Sweep is an extra bonus. You got to at least find a way to get 1. And we look flat out terrible. Now, yesterday, I will admit, we finally started to hit. We strung a couple hits together. We actually looked like a team that wanted to win. But, we didn't get the win. And at the end of the day, that's the story of it. We didn't get the win. It's a frustrating way to lose, especially with that strike call. That was an awful call, a call that should not have been made. That is not, I will never blame the game on the umps or the refs, whatever sport you're in. That was a terrible call. There's no other way of saying it. But, the Yankees also got to find a way to maybe win games in other ways. And, they can't always, rely on the long ball. Maybe, in that one inning of I think it was runner on second if there's another hit. There were so many other opportunities in that game for the New York Yankees to win. And frankly, we didn't take advantage of them, and they lost. And at the end of the day, you look at this team and we're still struggling. We're still not playing good baseball. That's how it is. That's the reality. The New York Yankees are not playing good baseball. There's no glass half full type of response with this team. We're not playing good baseball. I could care less if we're above 2 games above 500. I could care less. We're not playing good baseball. We look terrible, and there's changes that need to be made. This lineup is not playing well. All we care about is hitting a home run here and there. We're not stringing together hits. A lot of these games aren't even close. We're not playing good baseball. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but we're playing terrible, and we look like a team. To be honest, our performance looks a whole lot worse than our record. Our record's 31-29, which isn't awful, but we're playing much worse than our record shows, and we're 4th in the AL East. And we only went back in the AL East. We went behind the Blue Jays after this week's performance. You have a 7-game homestand, an opportunity to really take advantage of that. 4 against Tampa, 3 against your rivals, and you come out and lose 5 of 7. Terrible by the New York Yankees, and they continue to struggle. And it's the same stuff over and over again. This lineup. The bullpen's been good, but, they've been showing some rough patches here and there, but that's because they've been used so much. They've been used a lot. There's been some guys, when Tyone's going out there to pitch, Nothing against him, but I mean, it's a guy that can only seem to go 5 innings. That's 4 innings for your bullpen to chew up. So the Yankees right now are a hot mess. We don't look good. We have a day off today. You got to hope that today this team just sits there and thinks about how bad they're playing and they got to come back tomorrow. They have 3 against Minnesota, and then you have another day off, then you head to Philly. You have 3 against Minnesota. That is a great opportunity. I mean, Minnesota is one of the worst teams in the league. They're terrible this year. If you can't beat Minnesota, then this team's got serious issues. So the Yankees lose. Nets got the win. Mets played well this weekend as well. Islanders also got a win. So New York sports overall has been pretty good with some wins. Yankees can't seem to get a win. And yeah, let's get into the topics for today's podcast. With all that being said, obviously Julio Jones, the big news coming out of the NFL. Julio Jones has officially been traded. The Atlanta Falcons are sending Julio Jones to the Tennessee Titans, and the Falcons received 2022 and 2023 NFL draft picks. I believe it's a 2nd and a 5th, so not much in return. I mean, the Titans' offense is going to be lethal. Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown, Ryan Tannehill has been a very solid addition for them at quarterback. You all of a sudden look at that roster, and it went from, losing 2 big names on that offensive side of the ball, Corey Davis to the New York Jets and Jonnu Smith, who signed with the New England Patriots, and you went from, losing Jonnu Smith and Corey Davis and really all being left with A.J. Brown, and now all of a sudden you go out there and pick up Julio Jones. I mean, it's a great move for the Tennessee Titans. They did not have to give up much for one of the top receivers in the NFL, and I understand he's getting older, but he's handling age great. He's still going out there. He's still playing phenomenal. He's still having big games. He still looks good doing it, and frankly, the Tennessee Titans went from being a team that were, good, and, you talk about, I'm not saying they're going to win a Super Bowl, but you talk about, being a piece or 2 away from getting to a level like a Super Bowl level, and the Titans got that when they made the trade yesterday for Julio Jones. They got that piece, they got the next addition, and the Falcons went from being a solid team to all of a sudden being a big-time threat in the AFC with this one move. So I'll get into that. I'll tell you how it impacts the Falcons, because a big loss for the Falcons, I mean, he meant so much to that city, to that team, to just the NFL in general, and now he's going to Tennessee. And, you got to look at it as, like, this Tennessee team now, you look at the schedule, you might have had, okay, maybe we squeak one out against Tennessee. And no, you're not. Tennessee's going to be an extremely difficult team to beat now with Julio Jones on that roster. Then I also want to get into Jack Eichel rumors, Sabres, and the Rangers. Jack Eichel. Teams are calling up about Jack Eichel. We've all heard that the Rangers are, that the Rangers have shown some potential interest in him. They have not been one of the teams that have been noted that have called up. We have not heard of who teams have called up yet. But we do know is that the Rangers last offseason did make a push for Eichel. And again, this offseason, there's many rumors that say the Rangers are going to make another push for Eichel. And teams are calling. The Sabres are willing to trade him. And a lot of people think now that the Sabres might just get rid of Eichel, and they might not even ask for that much. There is some people saying now that the Sabres are so fed up with Eichel that they're just angry at him. Eichel's mad at the Sabres. Sabres are mad at Eichel. That both sides just want to get rid of each other, that want to leave each other. There's some rumors that the Sabres might just give up Eichel. They're going to get some in return, but they might not get as much as many people would expect. So I wanted to get into that, get into those rumors, and really talk about the state of the Buffalo Sabres, because the team who got the number 1 overall pick, this could really impact, what you do in the draft. Because I'm sure if you trade Eichel, you're going to want to pick from this year's draft if you make it before the NHL draft. And that's big, obviously. Sabres building for the future, and Eichel and the Sabres have been at odds really for the entire year and a little bit of last offseason as well. So I want to get into that. Then we'll finish off with the New York sports update. Obviously, Nets play tonight. Yankees day off today, so that should be interesting. I guess we can't lose. Yankees day off, Mets day off. Islanders will play today, game 5 of that series, tied 2-2. Isles tied it over the weekend, so Isles head back to Boston and for game 5 tonight. Big game tonight. You win tonight, you're up 3-2. You just got to get one more. If you lose tonight, all of a sudden in game 6, your back's against the wall. It's an elimination game. So big game tonight for both teams. And then, obviously, Yankees day off, Mets day off. Only 3 MLB games on tonight, so not much MLB. 3 games on, Yankees day off, Mets day off, Islanders play tonight, Nets play tonight. A lot of playoffs, a lot of exciting games coming up. So with all that being, that's all on tonight. Obviously there, then Yankees will start back up with tomorrow's game in Minnesota, start of a 3-game set. So, with all that being said, this is the BSN podcast, and let's get into it. So, Julio Jones traded to Titans. Falcons get picks in 2022, 2023 NFL draft. So, obviously not this year's NFL draft. Obviously, they're not going to pick, but next year's NFL draft and the year after that, the Tennessee Titans Falcons have received those picks, and the Tennessee Titans have obviously received Julio Jones, and we all know these rumors have been going on for a really long time, and you talk about a couple weeks now. Really, this entire offseason, there's been some rumors around the Falcons in general. What were they going to do with Matt Ryan? What were they going to do with Julio Jones? You know, obviously they already solved the coaching when they fired, their coach Dan Quinn, but obviously there was still a lot of questions surrounding his team. You know, what are you going to do with the coach? Obviously they made their decision there. Obviously Matt Ryan as well. You know, there's been a lot of questions around this Atlanta Falcons team, and we got the answer for Matt Ryan when they didn't decide to draft a quarterback. Some people believed that they were going to draft a quarterback in the NFL draft, pass up on Kyle Pitts and draft a quarterback. Sure enough, they ended up drafting Kyle Pitts, and that answered the question that Matt Ryan will be the quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons come the 2021-2022 NFL season. And obviously Julio Jones as well. I mean, there was a question about Julio Jones. You know, is this guy going to be on a team? Is he going to get traded? And sure enough, the Falcons and Julio, not one side, but both sides agreed to part ways. Both sides agreed to move on from each other, and Julio requested a trade, and the obviously Falcons accepted that trade request, started looking for trades. It's been going on for a couple months now, and obviously yesterday, June 6th, we finally got a trade partner. The Tennessee Titans go out and take Julio Jones, and I look at this as, hey, like, I don't understand. I'm going to get into that side of it. I'm going to get to the Titan side first, then I'll get to the Falcon side after this. This deal makes so much sense for the Tennessee Titans. And a lot of people might think, oh, well, you know, they're just going out there to add another talent. Yes, they are. I mean, they are going out there. They're adding Julio Jones, who I still believe is a very good receiver in this league and can still make a big-time impact on any NFL roster. I mean, it's an automatic upgrade whenever you get Julio Jones. There's not too many guys out there. I don't care how old Julio Jones is. There's not too many guys out there that are as good as Julio Jones. He is still one of the top receivers in the league. You look at the numbers. You look at what he does on the field. Last season, he only played 9 games. He still put up big numbers. He still, if he played all 16 games, he was on pace to hit big-time numbers like he has done in his entire career since he obviously got drafted by the Atlanta Falcons 6th overall, I believe, in the 2010 NFL draft. Don't quote me on that. I believe it was a 2010 NFL draft, 6th-round pick. I know the Falcons moved up for him, gave him a lot, but he was a big-time player for the Atlanta Falcons. He was worth it. So it's not just, and a lot of people might think, oh, well, the Titans, went out and got Julio just to add another talent, just to add a guy to the roster. But to be honest, I mean, a receiver was not a huge need for the Tennessee Titans. It was a need, but it wasn't anything major. If they went into the season with A.J. Brown as their main receiver, who is one of the young players in the league, one of the guys that I really believe has a really bright future ahead of him, had a big year last year, and looks like he's going to continue to improve and produce, obviously the receiving core wasn't bad. It's not like it was bad and needed a complete makeover, but in a sense, like, the Falcons, the Titans, they definitely could use another receiver because you lost Corey Davis, who had a big year last year, to the New York Jets in free agency, and obviously you also lost Jonnu Smith to New England Patriots also in free agency. And Jonnu Smith last year had a very solid year at the tight end position, and Corey Davis had the best year of his career analytically, and, you look at him on the field, he had the best year of his career last season for them, and he became a big-time role. He really became a big-time second receiver only behind A.J. Brown, and you lost both of them in free agency, so you're really kind of only left with A.J. Brown, but now you go out and get Julio Jones, and now all of a sudden you look at this offense, and it's like this offense is complete. It's like everything that you wanted, everything that you dreamed of, everything that you need is now in place for the offensive line. You got your quarterback in Ryan Tannehill. I know a lot of people still don't believe Tannehill is the answer, and they might look to get a quarterback after this season. I believe that Tannehill is the answer. I believe that he's the guy. I believe that he could still help out this team in many different ways. You obviously already have Derrick Henry at the running back position, and now you went from just having Jonnu Smith to now adding on and having Julio Jones, and you have A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill, and you look at that offense, and on paper, it looks amazing. And the reason I say on paper is because they have not played all together yet. A.J. Brown, Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill have played all together. Julio Jones has still got to fit into the scheme. He's got to learn the offense. He's obviously got to, do all that stuff. So they have not all played together all just yet. But on paper, this looks like an offense that could be extremely lethal. And an offense that might find itself winning double-digit wins this season, maybe even getting into the teens, like a 13-4 record, 14-3. This team looks really good, and they look really scary. And you know how I am with that. When I predict win totals, sometimes I'm a little harsh. I'm not a guy that's going to go out there and predict the team to go 17-0 this year. I'm not. There might be, I'm not. I'm not a guy that's going to go out there and predict the team to probably go 15-2. There might be, I'm not. I'm always a little harsh on win totals. Because you got to always set the bar. You got to set the bar high, obviously. But you don't want to set the bar like, for example, Titans this year. They should win 15 games. No, that's unfair. Okay, that's unfair to say. Because their defense is still a little bit of a weakness. Do I see the fact? If the Titans don't win 10 games, it's a big-time upset. Titans have at least got to win 10 games this year. With this offense, this team, this coaching staff, they've got to at least win 10 games. So I don't even look at this move as this isn't a move that, like some people might think, oh, they're just loading up with a bunch of random talent. No. First off, they got a proven receiver in Julio Jones, who we've all seen what he can do. And number two, to be honest, receiver was a little bit of a need after you lost Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith. Obviously, Davis to the Jets and Jonnu Smith to the Patriots. You lost both of those guys in the offseason. So you at least needed to recoup that receiving core. And not that I didn't believe in A.J. Brown, but outside of Brown, it was an average receiving core. And now you add on Julio Jones, and you got an excellent 1-2 punch, and that's all you need. A.J. Brown's covered, oh, let's throw it to Julio. Julio's covered, oh, let's throw it to A.J. Brown. If both of them are covered, you could still throw it to them. They could probably make a play. They could make something out of nothing. And then, oh, yeah, they got arguably the best running back in the NFL in the backfield in Derrick Henry. With his stiff arms, his power running, his 20-yard pickups, his, needing to grind out 5 yards for you. You need him to get 20, he'll get it. This offense is really good, and it went from good to being a solid offense to being all the way up to, you got to compare it to some of the better ones in the league. Because you could almost say you got 3 superstars, or A.J. Brown, I think, will be a star in this league. Julio Jones, Derrick Henry, all those guys, big-time stars, big names. A.J. Brown, big name, he's still growing, he's still learning, he's still young. So I don't know if you want to call him a superstar yet. Tannehill's not a superstar. Tannehill's a solid quarterback, he's not a superstar. He's not a Patrick Mahomes. He's not that. But he's good. He's a solid quarterback. He could get the job done, get you to the playoffs. So this Titans offense, and they didn't give up a lot. And that's where I'm going to get into here, the Falcons. The Falcons only got a second and a fifth in return for Julio Jones. And I get it. Or a 20, actually, fourth round pick and a 6th round pick. And the Falcons drafted him in 2011. So the Falcons receive a 2nd round pick in 2022 and 2 2023 picks. 4th round pick in 2023 and a 6th round pick in 2023. To be honest, I think this is a steal for the Titans. And I understand there was many reports, and there still are reports, that teams didn't want to give up a lot for Julio because of his contract. His contract's so big, if he has a big year this year, you could very well see him asking for more money. And the one thing with Julio, because I do think he deserves the money, he's still, I think, a very good receiver in this league. The one issue with Julio's contract is Julio's a guy that likes a lot of guaranteed money. And if it doesn't work out, that translates into a lot of, dead cap and a lot of money that just goes nowhere and just only is against you. Although the Falcons deal worked out, obviously you still look at it, even the Falcons, they have a lot of dead cap. It really hurt their cap. Obviously trading him now. So a lot of teams, they said that they didn't want to give up much for Julio because of the fact that his contract's so big. And if he has a good year this year, he's probably only going to want more money. He's going to want a new contract. And in that contract, he's going to want a lot of guaranteed money. He got it in the Falcons contract. He's going to want it again. You got to more than likely assume it's with the Titans in the Tennessee Titans contract. So that's why a lot of teams didn't want to give up much. And that's where if you want to stand on the Falcons side of things, you got to go on their side and you got to back them up. And you say, oh, we only got, a fourth, a sixth, and a second-round pick for arguably one of the better receivers in the league and obviously the face of the franchise. You only got that in return for a guy that's still playing at a high level even though he is in his 30s and he's not as young as he used to be. You got to feel pretty disappointed about that. But at the same time, it was because of contract. Now, to be honest, if I was the Falcons, I would not accept the deal for a second, a fourth, and a sixth. I know that both sides agreed to move on. I understand that Julio requested a trade. Falcons accepted that request and said, hey, we'll move on. But to be honest, if you're the Falcons, I think you would have at least wanted at least one first-round pick. And it could have maybe been a first-round pick for 2023. Maybe not this first-round pick for this upcoming year's draft, which is 2022. Maybe you ask for a first-round pick in 2 years from now. Maybe you ask for an early 2 seconds and maybe a fourth. I just don't know if giving up Julio Jones, who, number one, and this is even, I don't even think the most important reason, he's still a very high-end receiver, but you gave up a guy who so many people loved him in the city. He was arguably the biggest name for Atlanta sports. He's the face of the franchise. To give up that kind of player, that he made that much of an impact on a city, on a team, on a roster, to give up him and only get a second, a fourth, and a sixth, and that fourth and the sixth is in a 2023 NFL draft, which is 2 years from now, to give up that and only gain that, I just don't know. So right now, definitely think the Titans won this trade. I do. And part of the reason I say that is because we have no clue what the second, fourth, and sixth round pick will turn into. Who knows? That sixth round pick could turn into an absolute legend. We don't know. But I think if you're the Falcons, you got to be kicking yourself a little bit. You got to have at least tried your best. Maybe even just if it's one first round pick. Trade Julio for a first round pick. I understand his contract's so big, but teams got to realize he's going to deserve the money. I mean, this is a guy that's going to make an immediate impact on this Falcons team. He's also a veteran in a locker room and a relatively younger locker room. Julio knows what it's like to win. He's been in a Super Bowl before. Although they lost and they choked that Super Bowl, he's been in one. So, not only are you getting talent, but you're also getting a guy that's got veteran presence, has experience winning, has experience being in a Super Bowl. That's rare to get for some players. He didn't win it, but he still was in it, and he still experienced it. So, just that's the one issue. And I understand the Falcons, they got draft picks, and that's good. They did. I understand that. And I understand they're moving towards the future they're building towards. They got a lot of young guys. They got guys like, Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts. They got a lot of really young assets on that team. And I understand that. But to give up the face of the franchise, to give up that high skill of a player, and I understand other teams didn't want to give up that much just because of his contract. I mean, still, Falcons really should have pushed that. They should have just put everything out there. They said, first round pick for Julio Jones, done deal. Or a first and a fourth. Do something like that. I just don't know how I feel about that. So, right now, definitely, Titans have won this deal. And also, I also would say that the Titans got something that was a relatively need of theirs. Because they lost Johnny Smith and Corey Davis. And I'll say that for 20 more times. I know I've mentioned that a lot, but it's big. It's big to mention that. And now they gain Julio Jones, which fills that hole very easily. So Julio Jones traded to the Titans. Falcons get picks in 2022, 2023 NFL drafts. The Tennessee Titans will acquire receiver Julio Jones in a trade with the Falcons, with the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons confirmed Sunday. The Falcons have agreed on terms of a trade that will send the 7-time Pro Bowler to the Tennessee Titans for a compensation package that includes a 2022 second-round pick, a second-round NFL draft pick, ending weeks of speculation about whether Jones will remain with the team that drafted him in 2011. All told, the Falcons will get a second-round pick next year and a 2023 fourth-round pick for Jones and a sixth-round pick in 2023. In addition, the high draft pick and the 2023 selection. In addition to the high draft pick and the 2023 selection, Sunday's trade comes after June 1st, which changes the transaction's impact on the Falcons' salary cap. It creates substantial 2021 salary cap space and splits his cap hit to give the Falcons welcome relief over multiple seasons. And the Falcons sent out a tribute video because of you 11. You always mean more. Will always mean more. Because of you 11 will always mean more. Falcons sent out like a tribute video. Just it is, like I said, face of the franchise, guy who was arguably the best player in the city, but best player, arguably one of the better players in the league, and you trade him, and that's business. I mean, guy, and it's very hard to play for one team your entire career. Ian Rappaport of NFL Network was first to report the agreement. Jones requested a trade earlier in the offseason, and the team agreed to listen to offers. Per Rappaport, he later told Shannon Sharpe Undisputed that he planned to leave the team. "I'm out of there, man," he said on the air. A deal was virtually impossible until June 1st because of the salary cap. But the Falcons will now save $15.3 million against the 2021 after the trade per Spot Track. The player initially had a $23.05 cap hit for the first season of his 3-year extension, which ran through 2023. Jones could seek a new deal with the Titans after his move, as Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk previously reported. The 32-year-old is coming off of a disappointing season in which hamstring injuries limited him to just 9 games. It was a disappointing season for injuries, but he still actually didn't play that bad. He finished 2020 with 51 catches for 771 yards and 3 touchdowns, all his worst totals since the injury-filled 23 campaign. It was his worst totals because he only played 9 games. Despite the missed time, the superstar still finished 7th in the NFL with 85.7 receiving yards per game, while his 11.3 yards per target represented a career high. Jones remains one of the top players in the league at his position when healthy, which he has proved throughout a career that includes 7 Pro Bowl selections. He had at least 80 catches and 1,300 yards in each year from 2014 to 2019, averaging 104 receptions for 1,565 yards in this span. An average of 95.5 receiving yards per game is easily the best in NFL history, almost 20 yards better than Jerry Rice. Jones will try to keep it going with the Titans, which adds an elite weapon to a passing attack that ranked 23rd in the NFL last season. A.J. Brown returns coming off of a big year, but the unit was likely to take a step back after losing Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith to free agency. I've mentioned that earlier. Even if this is a run-heavy offense, Jones' addition could provide a lot of help to quarterback Ryan Tannehill while creating some much-needed balance. The move could also bring Jones closer to contention after he went the past 3 years without a playoff appearance. Atlanta finished 4-12 last season and is now even further from playoffs after trading one of the top players on the roster. The move will at least save cash and create flexibility going forward, as well as adding value assets to turn things around. The Falcons already have a replacement at receiver ready to go in Calvin Ridley, who set a career high with 1,374 receiving yards last year. Tight end Kyle Pitts also has a chance to make an early impact after going number 4 overall in the draft, while Russell Gage and Hayden Hurst will also take on bigger roles in the passing attack. And I get it, Calvin Ridley I think he's going to be a very good player in the league. He showed last season how good he can be. But I don't know if he's going to be Julio Jones. Julio Jones will go down in the record books. I mean, he's had some stats that he averaged, he'll go down in NFL history as, some big-time holders in some stat categories. You're asking Calvin Ridley to do the same. But, I mean, this deal makes sense for both teams. That's how I look at it. Now, I think the Titans win the trade only because the Falcons just didn't get the picks. That's the one issue. I mean, they got the picks, but I get the second-round pick is good. But other than that, I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer to the late-round picks. But, I mean, if you got a first-round pick, you might be able to say, we could take a receiver with that pick. Second-round pick, you could too. But, the Falcons obviously decided to get rid of Julio, and the Titans wanted him. And you also look at it as the Titans needed him. And, guys like A.J. Brown, Derrick Henry, they all recruited Julio. They wanted him. They wanted him on their team. So, you definitely know that Julio Jones is already a very liked player in Tennessee, in terms of, players wanting him. You already know that. And now it's an opportunity. He's got to learn the playbook. You got to learn the offense. He's got to learn the stuff over there. Now it's an opportunity for him and the rest of that, that offense to get going. Because that offense, like I mentioned, can be really lethal. And I want to say this. I don't want to make this sound like I'm calling the Titans a Super Bowl contender this year. Now, to be honest, you could say they're up there. But in terms of moves, because I always talk about this on the podcast, you look at moves that are crazy big moves, like moves that will take your team from here all the way up here. There's moves that will bring your team here to here. There's moves that sometimes make completely no sense, will actually make no sense, and it seems like it won't help your team at all. And then there's moves that might make you go from 0 to hero, and those are rare. Those are moves, making a blockbuster trade for a big-time player, almost like the Brooklyn Nets did. The Nets were here. They were very good, but then they went from all the way up here, like expectation, all of that stuff, when they traded for Harden. And that's how I see this move for the Titans. This move, you talk about moves that could maybe take you from a playoff team to a Super Bowl conversation team. That's what this move did. And I'm not saying that the Titans are going to make the Super Bowl. But I am saying, is it wild to say that they have the team to do it? No. The only thing I have issue with the Titans is they got to build their defense a little bit. That's the only issue. But their offense is so good, they might be able to outscore everyone and win. But if you understand what I'm saying, am I going to predict the Titans to win a Super Bowl this season? No. But is it wild to say the Titans might be in the conversation to be in the Super Bowl? No, it's not wild. It's not. It's not wild to say that. It's not, because this is a team who also made the AFC Championship game a couple years ago. They've only improved now with Julio Jones. It's not wild to say that they can be in the conversation. Is it wild to say that it's Super Bowl or bust? Yes, that's very wild. If they had a top 10 defense and they got this offense, I would say that, but that's wild. Their defense is still a little bit of an issue, especially their secondary. But their secondary was a little young. They did lose Dory Jackson, which was a tough hit. A young guy that, was learning and he's got a bright future. They obviously lost him to the Giants. So, they definitely lost some guys, but I'll tell you what. They gained a lot with getting Julio Jones. That's how I see it. So, Julio Jones to the Tennessee Titans really creates definitely interesting there in the AFC now. I mean, I think we can all agree that the AFC South is probably all Tennessee. And the reason I say that is because, you got the Titans, Colts, Texans, and Jags in that division. Colts would be the only team that's going to probably compete because the Jags are going to be improved this season, but they're not going to win the division. The Texans are terrible. They might only win 2 to 3 games. And the Colts are, solid. They obviously got Wentz, but that's also going to be interesting to see how Wentz plays out. But, now with the Titans and that offense, I think it's fair enough to say that the Titans, this is their division to lose. I will say that. The Titans and the Colts were right here, and now the Titans are up here, and the Colts are still here. But it's a big move. All right, so anyway, now I wanted to get into Jack Eichel. So coming up next, teams are calling the Sabres about their star player, Jack Eichel. Ahead of the 2021 NHL Draft, obviously the Buffalo Sabres won the draft lottery and owned the number 1 overall pick. And these rumors have been going on for a really long time, and they seem to be heating up a little bit here. Teams are calling. Will the Sabres listen? Will the Sabres pull the trigger and trade Jack Eichel? I will talk about that coming up next. Alrighty. So let's get this up here. Alright, so Jack Eichel trade rumors. Teams calling Sabres ahead of 2021 NHL Draft. So yes, you heard that right. The Buffalo Sabres and the Jack Eichel. I don't know how you want to word it. If you want to say saga, or if you want to say, if you want to say saga, or if you want to say whatever you want to say. However you want to word it. I don't mind. I don't care. It's continuing. Jack Eichel saga, Jack Eichel, I guess you kind of say, issue, Jack Eichel situation, whatever you want to call it. It is continuing to boil over and boil over and boil over. We went this stretch here, about a month here, where we didn't hear much about it. Draft lottery, playoffs, it kind of got it kind of got shot down a little bit. But now that the NHL draft lottery and NHL draft has officially been announced and teams know where they're going to pick and teams know what assets they're going to have, and maybe a team looked at this pick this year and say, hey, you know what, we're going to pull the trigger. I want Eichel. We're going to trade this pick for Jack Eichel. And now if you have the number 3 overall pick and the Sabres have the number 1, you're probably not going to trade that 3rd overall pick for Eichel. You're not. You're going to use that 3rd overall pick. You're going to use it, whatever. If you have a top 10 pick, I don't know if you're going to trade it to the Buffalo Sabres for a guy like Jack Eichel. You might rather just go out, get a young player, and build off of him, especially for some of the really bad teams that kind of need a new cornerstone of the franchise. Now, Jack Eichel obviously has been a member of the Sabres for a couple years now, and obviously a guy who has been arguably the face of the franchise. He's been the face of the franchise. He's been a big name. He's a big name throughout the league. He's been the Sabres' best player for the past couple seasons. He's been a guy that's been, very consistent, a guy that you got to rely on, a guy that's just been a very good hockey player. I mean, the Sabres got him to be a good player, and he's been a very good player for the Buffalo Sabres. Has he had the playoffs? I mean, he's never been to the playoffs. Did he? I mean, the only good thing I guess you can kind of say that he hasn't lived up to expectations is he's never got the team to the playoffs. Now, that was not the expectation getting here, but if you're a Sabre fan, you got to be thinking, when they drafted Eichel, you got to be thinking, get some other young assets. You got to be thinking playoffs might be somewhere in the near future, but they still haven't gotten there. And the Sabres, I think, in a way, the Buffalo Sabres, and I know I mentioned this a lot on the podcast when I was talking about Taylor Hall and all that stuff, in a way, the Buffalo Sabres, it seemed like the Sabres, in a way, were in a little bit of an odd situation because they were in that rebuild, and then they seemed to be getting out of the rebuild once they signed Taylor Hall. And you all of a sudden look at their roster, and they had a solid roster. They had a competitive roster. Did they have a Stanley Cup roster? No. Did they have a playoff roster? Well, they were borderline. Did I think they were going to be competitive and maybe be a talk down the stretch? Yes. I did not think they were going to be the worst team in the NHL. But I did expect them to be a talk and be a competitive team, especially after they added Taylor Hall, and they obviously already had Jack Eichel, and you got guys like Sam Reinhart, and you got, a nice young player in Victor Olofsson and guys like that, and you're looking at that roster, and you're looking like, yeah, it's not a roster like the Tampa Bay Lightning or the Colorado Avalanche, a roster that's, has a Stanley Cup aspirations, but it's a roster that could be competitive, and all of a sudden the season came around, and everything fell apart. And now they're entering again into a rebuild. It seemed like they were getting out of it. If you're a Sabre fan, there was reason to be excited this season. You were we're finally going to have a competitive hockey team. And all of a sudden, things went wild and something happened and just things went crazy. And all of a sudden, things went crazy and things kind of got a little wild. And the Buffalo Sabres ended up missing out of the playoffs and were terrible. And they were just, to put it the simple way as I could put it, they were terrible this season. They were the worst team in the NHL. And now it's they're entering again into another rebuild. It was they were coming out of it. They weren't completely out of it, but they seemed like they were coming out of it after last season's offseason. They had a good offseason. Jack Eichel has complained about losing. He wants to win. They went out, got Taylor Hall. He liked the move. Sabres fans liked the move. You're okay, around the NHL, people are all right, Sabres, you look like you look like you might actually be headed in the right direction. And in this season, they took a giant step back. And I don't even know where you want to say, where they took a step back. They went from being this bad to maybe being this, to trying to be, being competitive, to now all of a sudden they're back to being that bad. I don't really know, when were they, really terrible. But, I mean, now they took a big step back, and they're all of a sudden again entering another big rebuild, and the worst possible situation you could be in when entering a rebuild is not knowing what to do with your star player in Jack Eichel. In this case, it's Jack Eichel. Jack Eichel's not on every sport team around the world, but in this case, it's Jack Eichel. And the Sabres, here's my thing. Jack Eichel has not publicly requested a trade. He has not went up to the Sabres and said, I want to be traded. He's expressed frustrations. He's talked to the front office. He's expressed his frustration losing. He obviously had the neck injury this season. Sabres would not allow him to get the surgery because I guess it wasn't good or whatever. I don't even think he's still gotten it. His neck's still a little bit of an issue. And you could tell he's been mad at the Sabres. Now, are the Sabres mad at Eichel? I don't know. They haven't really said much. They give you a classic response of, we want Eichel on this team for the future, and then a couple days later they'll trade him. That's always how it is in the sports. It's always how it is. But That's the one thing. Is like that's where if you're the Sabres, like I think the Sabres genuinely have to do this. The GM, the front office has to have him meet with Eichel. And they have to sit down with him. And they have to ask him, do you want to play here? Just straight up ask him, do you want to play here? And if he says, if he expresses frustration, if he expresses concerns, then maybe you can try to work through those things and keep him on your team. Because honestly, if you're the Buffalo Sabres, I think the last thing you want to do is trade Jack Eichel. And I understand you're going to get a lot of pieces in return, and I get that. You're probably going to get a lot. Teams are going to have to give up a lot. I don't think the Sabres are going to trade Eichel and get nothing in return. You're going to have to give up a lot. But I mean, in terms of like trading him, if you're going to trade Eichel, you're going to get up a lot. But I mean, you're going to also, it's going to be a little bit of a, you're also giving up. You're going to get a lot, but you're giving up Jack Eichel. And the one issue is, if I'm the Buffalo Sabres, I would not want to trade Eichel, is because not only is he the best player on your team, not only is he the face of the franchise, not only is he a young star and still improving, pretty much, actually, I just said it, he's young. And that's a kind of, if I'm going to compare this a little bit to the Julio Jones thing, right? The Falcons traded Julio Jones, and you might think, oh, that's such a dumb move, he's face of the franchise, which I get that. But, I mean, he traded him because he is a little older now. He's still playing at a high level, and also they requested a trade. Eichel, he's still young. He's still improving. I don't even know if you can kind of consider him he's hit his prime yet. He might. But, I mean, like, if I'm the Sabres, I wouldn't want to trade him. But if he wants to be traded, you got to pull the trigger. I think the Sabres have to play this thing patiently. Deep down inside, I think Eichel wants to get traded. He's not making it public, but I do think he wants to get traded. And maybe, you know, I mean, to be honest, I think after everything that went on this offseason so far, and, you know, the Sabres getting the number one pick, and in a way that could be like the big thing, like, you know what, Eichel, we got you, you've been good, but just the time's up. And then maybe they start fresh with a new face in the building and a new, you know, cornerstone of the franchise. That might be what they do. And they get more picks. But, I mean, whatever you do with Eichel, I mean, whatever it is. I mean, Eichel's a very good player. He is. And I know he struggled last season through, the couple games that he played. He only had two goals and, 16 assists. I had him on my fantasy team. He was useless. And obviously getting injured didn't help. But, I mean, hey, definitely a very interesting situation with the Sabres. I think Eichel does want to be traded. If I'm the Sabres, I would not want to trade Eichel. I wouldn't. I mean, he's the face of the franchise. He's still a young player. He's still a star in the league. I would not want to trade him. But, I mean, if it comes down to he's not going to play, then you got to trade him. And if the Rangers are a team that, you know, definitely probably will be interested, you know, I'm all in on getting Jack Eichel. I would love to get Eichel. I would love it. But if the Rangers got to give up a lot and a lot of picks, and it kind of messes up your whole mojo of, you know, building for the future and, you know, continuing to get better with young talent, I don't know how I feel about that. And who knows, maybe the Sabres, maybe Eichel is so angry at the Sabres and the Sabres start to, and maybe they just, you know what, just get him out of here. Maybe they trade Eichel and maybe they don't get much in return. Maybe they kind of just decide, you know, we just got to get this guy out of here and we just got to start fresh with, you know, the number one overall pick, which will more than likely be Owen Power out of Michigan. So, a lot of questions to be answered here. And obviously, teams are calling about Eichel. And I'm sure there's going to be probably a lot of, we'll give you this pick and this pick for him. And I'm sure there might be a trade on draft night. There might be something like that. Who knows? But for the time being right now, definitely a big-time story. Jack Eichel trade rumors, teams calling ahead of 2021 NHL draft. The Buffalo Sabres are getting calls from teams looking to trade their cap for their captain, Jack Eichel, according to Darren Dreger of TSN. Eichel is one of the several Sabres players drawing interest from around the league, and conversations are expected to increase heading towards the draft, which gets underway July 23rd. The centerman missed most of the 2020-2021 season after suffering a herniated disc in his neck, finishing the year with just 2 goals and 16 assists in 21 games. Buffalo suffered without him and ended the season with the fewest points in the NHL, and that was 37 points. After 10 years without a postseason appearance, the Sabres could be looking at another rebuild, especially after landing the number one pick of this year's draft. Moving Eichel could help the process, as trading him should bring back a nice haul of assets. The 24-year-old has proven to be a quality talent when healthy, contributing 139 goals and 216 assists since being drafted number 2 overall in 2015. He had 82 points in 77 games in 2018-2019 and 78 points in 68 games during the Shorn 2019-2020 campaign. Eichel finished 8th in the voting for the Hart Trophy last season despite playing for a team with a losing record. A trade could give him a chance to shine for a contender and take the next step towards superstardom. He already gave an indication in May that he is ready for a move based on how his injury was handled this season, per Greg Wyshynski of ESPN. This is what Eichel said. I've been a bit upset about the ways things have been handled since I've been hurt. I've been lying to say that things have moved. I'd be lying to say that things have moved smoothly since my injury. There's been a bit of a disconnect between myself and the organization. It's been tough at times. Right now, for me, the most important thing is just trying to get healthy, figure out a way to be available to play hockey next year, wherever that might be. Eichel apparently wanted to get surgery to fix his neck injury, but the team decided against it. Though he signed through the 2025-2026 season, a split could be coming this offseason. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, you get the number 1 overall pick in the draft, which is an opportunity to just start over there, and then you could get more picks, and you probably might get another young asset and a player if you trade him. And Eichel, another thing. This is a guy, too, who is on a team that has struggled. He's never witnessed playoffs. They have not played the playoffs in 10 years. So, in terms of struggling and in terms of just like wanting to maybe just have more passion and go to a team that's at least contending, I mean, there's a lot of teams out there. And there's a lot of teams that could use Eichel, in terms of a contending type team that could use Jack Eichel. So, definitely a big-time story here. A lot going on. Teams calling. Will the Sabres answer? Will the Sabres listening? Will the Sabres decide to pull the trigger? We'll figure that all out, but it's going to be interesting. Obviously, it could very well be a move that happens before the draft that involves picks and stuff like that. And that could definitely be very big to how the NHL season plays out next season. All right, so with all that being said, that will do it for that part of the podcast. And now we head into the New York sports update here today. And around the sport league. Around the sports, obviously, Clippers only the Mavericks. But today, we got Game 1 of the Suns versus Nuggets. West semifinals, Game 1. Give me the Suns. And then the Nets also play today. So Nets coming in this game 1-0. Bucks coming in this game 0-1 in the series. This is Game 2. The Bucks are 1-point favorites. The over-under is 236.5. This game goes on today, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on TNT. 56% of people say the Nets or the Bucks will win. I tend to differ. I think the Nets will win. I think it's going to be extremely close. Mike James, Blake Griffin, Bruce Brown, guys like that are really going to have to step up. Give me the Nets to win. As for the NHL, today we got the Bruins Islanders. I think the Bruins will get this at home, and I think the Islanders will come back and force a Game 7, and then you'll head to TD Garden, and we'll see how that plays out. And then Canadiens-Jets. Canadiens are up 3-0. Give me the Canadiens. The Canadiens might sweep the Winnipeg Jets. I can't believe that the Canadiens have played that well. This is a team that was in contention, and there was a possibility of them not making the playoffs, and now they're in the playoffs, and they might be on their way to the conference finals of the Stanley Cup. Not might be. I mean, they have to choke a 3-0 lead. And as for the MLB, obviously, the Yankees, terrible. But as for the MLB today, we got the Red Sox and Marlins. I'll give the Red Sox the win. Angels, Royals, I'll give Angels the win. And Padres, Cubs, I'll give Padres the win. Not much on in the MLB world today. Only 3 games on today. Mondays tend not to have many games just because usually, a little bit of travel day and, teams going around and stuff like that. So that's usually what happens. All right, so I lost in fantasy baseball 309 to 290. So I moved to 5-4 in the season. But today I've got going Jake Cronenworth and Whit Merrifield, and that's it. Other than that, got no one starting, and then that's really it because there's only 3 games on today. Injury update is as followed. Yadier Molina is day-to-day. Molina knee is out of the lineup for Sunday's game against the Reds, but Cardinals manager Mike Shildt said the veteran catcher is expected to avoid a trip to the 10-day injured list. Jeff Jones of Belleville News-Democrat reports. So, we'll see how that plays out. And then also, Luke Voigt is also an update on him. Manager Aaron Boone mentioned June 15th as a potential date for Voigt oblique to begin a rehab assignment. Pete Caldera of the Bergen Record reports. So, hopefully the Yankees get Voigt back, and hopefully Molina stays healthy for the fantasy team. Voigt could be big for the Yankees. Gittins obviously got called up. I don't believe he's gone to hit yet, but he's still... Gittins is getting some really good swings on the ball. And when I was sitting there watching the game yesterday, I'm like, one of these has got to leave the park. He's not all making contact, but he's getting some really strong swings on it. And you could just tell, he's just he's so close to just hitting one. It's not something mechanically either. He's just got to catch up a little bit better than MLB pitching. He's a little behind the ball. And it's going to take time. You can't expect the guy to come up and go 10 for 10 and hit 10 home runs. You just can't expect that. But, yeah. So, Yankees day off today. A much-needed day off for the New York Yankees. And the Nets play tonight. Big game for the Nets tonight. And I'll tell you why. I understand we're up 1-0. And right now, we're in control. If almost in a way, Game 2, a lot of people say, is a must-win for whoever didn't win Game 1. Because it's tough to come back when you fall down 2-0. So, 2-0, obviously, Nets' opportunity to do that tonight. This is a big game tonight. Because the Nets, if they lose tonight, they head to Milwaukee tied 1-1. You got to hope you get Harden back for Game 3. And that's going to create some interesting things. Nets got to win. This is a big game for the Nets tonight. Big game for both teams. If the Nets win tonight, I'll feel very confident going to Game 3. And that might sound like a Captain Obvious answer. Well, if they lose, you're probably not going to be happy. You probably won't feel as confident. But it's the truth. I don't want to go 1-1 to a Milwaukee. I would much rather do 2-0, head there, 2-0 lead, big opportunity to take at least one there, come back 3-1, win it in Brooklyn, just like we did against Boston. That would be ideal. But big game tonight for the Nets. So hopefully they get the win. And yeah, with all that being said, that will do it for the podcast here today. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. I will see you all back here tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.